like to once again welcome you all to our second annual joint online service between the UU Church in Halifax, Nova Scotia and the UU Church in Bangor, Maine. With me here in Halifax are Jessica Friesen, our music director, and Marie-Claude Leroux, our director of religious exploration, and Paul Galbraith is working remotely as our technician. You'll be seeing both Jessica and Marie-Claude later in the service.
On behalf of the Unitarian Universalist Society here in Bangor, I wish everyone in Halifax and Canada a hearty welcome. I am Reverend Andrew Moeller, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the settled minister here in Bangor, Maine. I am coming to you live from our historic sanctuary at 120 Park Street. It is nice to have you with us today and enjoy together the sacrament of spring. Norm.
Today, we're celebrating the maple syrup communion. If you didn't get the memo, and if you are at home and you would like to partake fully in this event, I suggest you get a small beverage ready. We'll be using dilute maple syrup here in the sanctuary, but any beverage will do, and a small piece of bread or pastry. To make it official, we're using the official Tim Hortons Timbit.
Today in our service, we have several people who are helping make this service possible. First of all, I want to recognize Karen Childs, who you'll get to see a little bit later on, who is our Director of Spiritual Exploration for our young people. Molly J. Webster, who is our Music Director, who is not here in the sanctuary with us today. I got an email from her this morning saying that she's feeling ill and as a precaution was staying home. And John Arman, who over here, who just offered our in-gathering music. In addition, we have the Bens, that is Ben Goff, who is running our control center in the back here, and Ben Speed, who is monitoring the TV. And I also want to thank Lori Cartier, our chair of our worship committee, Phyllis Havens, and Sue McKay, who prepared our host for us, or the communion that we'll be taking care of. We're especially happy for the way that not only the ministers collaborated this year, but also our music directors have collaborated greatly, and there's some wonderful music with Molly and Jessica, who will be bringing that to us. As Norm mentioned, there's some things that we're trying to work with in the differences between our systems of technology. So just for people, if you're in our sanctuary and you usually use the hearing assist system, that's not operable today. So if you want to hear, we invite you to come a little bit closer to the sound that's coming out of the sound bar on the screen here. As a means of getting to know our different congregations a little bit better, we thought that we would share our announcements together. So I'm going to invite Sue McKay, who's going to come forward and offer our announcements. And we don't need to use the slides that we had.
Okay, I've got a list of announcements. I will be quick. First, if you want to provide some funding for Easter flowers, the envelopes are right over there where the collection basket is for your donation for today. We have a new to UU class coming up. You can do it on Zoom on April 6th, or you can do it live here on April 13th. That'll be from 6:30 to 8. Learn more about UUism, and if you're brand new, this is a great class, or if you're not brand new, it's still a great class. Pledge cards are available. We still are about $30,000 shy of our goal, and if you haven't filled out a pledge card yet, I have some. Please don't leave without taking one. Hannaford grocery cards are going to be for sale today, and Kate is going to be selling those. The auction is coming May 7th on Zoom, 7 p.m. Mark your calendars, always a great time. Solar energy for your home through Ampion. Information is available on the Dorothy Memorial Bulletin Board and in the e-news. And Ukrainian relief info is also on the bulletin board and in your e-news. And the memorial services for 4 of our members and friends, also posted on the bulletin board and in the e-news. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. We've got a lot going on. In addition, I just want to remind people that we don't have a offertory set up in the service today, so if you wish to make a donation, you can do so by placing your donation in the basket on the way out. Half of our Share the Plate this month is going to Ukrainian relief through the UU Service Committee. And also to let our young people know that after the story, we will be inviting you to go downstairs with Karen for youth chapel, and we want to prepare you for that. So when we finish the story and go into our opening hymn, that will be a time for you to transition. So, Norm, I think that's enough. How about what's going on in Halifax?
Thank you, Drew. I'll get Paul to put up the slide of the Halifax announcements. These were in the order of service, so I'm not going to go over them in detail, except for one that I would like to highlight. The announcement that I wanted to highlight was that today we're launching the final phase of our capital fundraising to gather the last $10,000 needed before we commit to construct our wonderful new accessible deck. If I remember correctly, the target fundraising required was $20,000, and before we got the program launched, we had already raised half of that amount. The deck was will be constructed to a design that involved our building committee and specifically involved Wietske Gradstein, who for so many years was a critical part of this congregation, the person who reminded us of the need for things to be accessible. And with her design, the new deck is going to be fully accessible with an automatic door leading from the ballroom. So it's a way to remember Wietske as well, if you'd like to make a contribution with her in mind. So people are welcome to write a check or fill out an e-transfer or fill out a pledge form, which are available today on the welcome table. And now the introit.
Praise to God and thanks we bring, hearts rejoice and voices sing, praises to the glorious one, for a year of wonder done, praise now for the blood and green, April's resurrection seen, praise now for the shining hours, starring all the land with flowers. Praise now for the summer rain, feeding day and night with rain. Praise now for the tiny seed, holding all the word shall need. Praise now for the garden brood, meadow grass and orchard fruit, and for hills and valleys broad, bring we now our thanks to
At this point in our service each week in Halifax, we pause to acknowledge the land and the interdependent web of nature that sustains us all. This morning, I have a very special guest who I'm proud to call a personal friend and a friend of the Halifax congregation. Mary Louise Bernard is a Mi'kmaq elder from Cape Breton, and Mary Louise will be reading a story for us later and will be introduced more properly then.
I would like to welcome you all to the unceded territory of my people, the Mi'kmaq, to Unimagi, the land of fog, where I'm located at today, known as Cape Breton Island, and to Mi'kma'ki, the Maritimes. And it's a great pleasure to be here on this beautiful day, and the sun is shining here in Cape Breton Island, and I'm here to read the story of the legend of maple syrup.
So now as we cross a threshold, we begin the formal part of our Sunday service, now that we have all the bugs worked out. And as we do so, we'll partake of a ritual that marks the beginning of UU services around the world, the lighting of a chalice. Today, rather than a reading, we're sharing a video that was made here in Canada by the Canadian Unitarian Council with music composed by Lynn Harrison. Many here in Canada will have seen this, but we thought it would be a gift for our sisters and brothers in Bangor.
There are days when you're tending the embers, when the flame flickers down to a spark, when the shadows grow long in your wilderness, when it's hard to be strong, just remember this. Keep it alive, keep it alive, the light of love that shines inside you. Keep it alive, burning and bright. Keep it alive, keep it alive, keep it alive, keep it alive. Keep it alive, keep it alive, keep it alive, keep it alive. There's a flame that sustains love and justice. Everyone holds it here in the heart. It can carry us through from birth till death. It is kindled anew with every breath. Keep it alive, keep it alive, the light of love that shines inside you. Keep it alive, burning and bright. Keep it alive, keep it alive. The light of love, peace, the warmth of kindness, the blaze of light, the spark of joy, it's all within us. Keep it alive, keep it alive, the light of love that shines inside you. Keep it alive, burning and bright. Keep it alive, keep it alive, keep it alive, keep it alive, the light of love that shines inside you. Keep it alive, burning and bright. Keep it alive, keep it alive, keep it alive, burning and bright. Keep it alive, 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 keep
Now I invite Marie-Claude Leroux to introduce our special guest and the special story for children of all ages.
Good morning, everyone. I consider it a gift that here in the East Coast, with spring comes the running of the sap. Sap that turns into my very favorite food, which is maple syrup. As has been our tradition these past few years, during our spring maple service, we will hear the story of the sweet water maiden, the Mi'kmaq legend of maple syrup. This year, we have the great pleasure of having the story told to us by the author herself, Mary Louise Bernard, elder and former chief of the Wagmatcook First Nation. Thank you, Mary Louise.
Yes, and thank you for having me here. The story I'm about to read it was actually a bedtime story when I was growing up. My mother used to read to me in my own language in Mi'kmaq, and I have since translated it to English and is present form as a storybook. It was a harsh winter, the snow deep and the wind bitter cold. Slowly the warmth of the sun melts the frozen land. Deep in the forest danced an old Indian man with arms outstretched to the sun. For today he would go on his spiritual quest. It would not be the same as springs before. He would travel on this quest alone. His life partner and mother of his children did not survive the bitter winter. With sadness in his heart, he knows this journey will be his last. Awakening from her sleep, comfortable under a deerskin blanket, a young Indian maiden hears footsteps and peeks through the bearskin hide, which is the doorway to her home. She sees her grandfather trudging slowly up the mountain. She feels his pain and knows he must travel alone to speak to his spirit. She remembers springs before when she would watch her grandparents enter the forest together. The days grow warmer and grandfather has been gone for many days. She whispers to her mother with a concerned look on her face. Her mother reaches for her hand and places a flint in her open palm. The Indian maiden gathers her belongings and hurries into the forest. Glancing back, she waves farewell to her mother. Her mother smiles and nods her head in approval. Soon the Indian maiden disappears into the forest. All that remain are the footprints in the fresh falling snow. Grandfather, weak from days on his quest, rests on a rock, listening to the running water of a small stream. He senses someone coming in the distance. He builds his shelter and strikes a tree with his tomahawk, leaving a gap on the tree. And then he slowly retires into his shelter of branches and boughs, dreaming of a time as a young warrior, vibrant and strong. The Indian maiden sees the tomahawk from a distance. She slowly approaches it, and beneath it are her grandfather's belongings. Water from the handle of the tomahawk drips into the hollowed out log. She quietly prepares her grandfather's meal. And as a sweet aroma drips into the shelter, her grandfather awakens. There by the fire sits his granddaughter. She hands him the bowl of food and gives him a questioning look for the food she had prepared as a taste foreign to her. Grandfather finishes his meal. He glances up at the tree as the sweet water drips from his tomahawk. He smiles and secretly tells his granddaughter of his vision and bestows on her a sacred name. For without her, his vision would have only been a dream. The Creator has given us a gift to be shared by all. As the season turned into years, the Indian maiden often told her story to her people while making sweet food using the sap from the maple tree. And the Indian maiden became known as the Sweetwater Maiden, the name that her grandfather gave her. This is the legend of the maple syrup. Kwe, Walalin. Kwe means greetings. Walalin means thank you. I hope you take these two words and use them. Walalin is used in so many ways today. And we really appreciate it when we hear somebody tell us, Kwe, Walalin, greetings and thank you, and have a very great day.
Thank you so much. I've traveled a little and known a few words in a language, but when I'm in a foreign environment, I hesitate to use the words because I'm feeling self-conscious. I think here, living in the land of Mi'kmaq, we should all be learning some of the local language. So, Kwe Walalin, hello and thank you. Thank you for that, Mary Louise.
Walani.
And now I think we're going back to Bangor for Karen.
Hi, everybody. Kwe walale. Thank you very much for your story, Mary Louise. I wanted to let folks know that if they're interested in buying one of her books, you can talk to Reverend Drew here in Bangor, and you can talk to Reverend Norm if you are up in Canada. And right now we're going to be singing our opening hymn if you are online or if you are in Canada and humming along here in Bangor in the sanctuary. And our kids are going to be heading downstairs as we're doing that.
Morning has come, night is over. Rise with song and welcome the day. Morning has come, night is done. God brings us light, and God brings us light, and night is not sad. God brings us light, and God brings us light, God brings us light, night is not sad. God brings us light, God brings us light, God brings us light, night is not sad. Rise in the sun and welcome the day.
This morning we'll not be sharing individual joys and sorrows because of the technical and logistical limitations of a shared service on Zoom. Instead, I invite everyone to join me now in a collective pastoral prayer. Prayer, in my interpretation, has the power to change the person who is praying. And in that spirit, I invite you to pray with me. I know that many of you now are anxious, even suffering from the stress of the events around us, the tragedies unfolding in Ukraine, the threats of climate crisis. The list goes on and on. You may be suffering from anxiety, issues of mental health or physical health, financial or emotional stress. This morning, our two communities pray together as one, that those suffering in this way may be relieved of these stresses. For this time together, we ask to be able to turn our minds to celebrate the beauty of the natural world, the regularity of the seasons that we count on, the gift of spring, the return of life to the world around us. This morning, that gift of beauty that is all around us is represented by the annual running of the maple sap. Let us never take such gifts for granted. May we find a way to turn our minds to the many gifts that we have been given, even as we reach out to those in this one small planet who need our efforts to promote peace and justice for all. Please join me now in a moment of silence. Thank you. May it be so. Amen. And now, I invite Jessica to present our reflective hymn.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the
rhythm of the seasons reminds us of the cycle of life flowing in the natural world. 1 week ago today, we marked the official coming of spring. In doing so, we are reminded of the ancient cycle of our solar system's process through the cosmos, the process of birth and growth and decline and death, which in turn brings forth new life. We also rejoice in the returning of longer days and shorter nights, which renew our spirits and hope for new beginnings and harvest times to come. This spring, we are grateful for being able to unite our two congregations, joined across borders into one large community of faith. Together, we're united by our common faith and the spirit of connection that ties all beings together, and hopes for a world of equality, justice, kindness for all people, and respect for all life.
Just as the sap in the trees start pumping and giving new life to the branches and leaves of the trees, we are reminded that just as our ancestors were, that in this springly season, we too have more living to do. And as long as there is life, there is renewal and hope, despite the many challenges that surround us, from a global COVID pandemic, wars in the Ukraine, and other divisions and struggles, many created by humankind. In this season, when the natural world awakens, we are reminded of the limitation of our own lives, and yet we are excited and enthralled with the sweet miracle of life, and reminded that we, still living and loving, remain in the moments of life, those moments that are so precious and beautiful if we only embrace them. In a few moments, we will begin our maple syrup communion ritual. If you haven't already, now is a good time to get your maple syrup and bread or donut together if you are joining us online. We will have that taken care of here if you're in the sanctuaries. Our ritual is very, very simple. First, we will hear a few words of a maple sermon communion litany offered by Norm and I. Then I will offer a blessing on the maple syrup communion. That will bring sweetness to our lives today. Then, as we offer our special music by our UUSB choir, those who are in person in the sanctuaries can come forward and get one of your little maple syrup communion packages and bring that back to your seat. And as you continue to listen to the music and be present to the space, you can dip your Timbit and into your maple syrup and enjoy the music and the sweetness of the moment. So with that, I'm going to invite Reverend Norm to begin our litany.
We see and taste and smell the signs of change in the cold blue of our northeastern skies, in the frozen earth. Winter's pageantry fades before the coming of spring.
Spring, the awakening of life, is ready to be observed and cherished in our hearts.
This afternoon's sun's lavender shadow cast by trees and snow lengthened like the light foretelling of spring.
Like an artist, the power of creation within the earth prepares to spread its color over the white forest floor.
The interlaced bare branches of trees cast mystical shapes against the night sky. The light of the moon reveals the eternal beauty of tangled arms reaching for the stars.
Give to us the strength of rooted trees and the life which flows from earth to limb.
Drink the sweet sap of life which flows from root to limb, bringing strength and renewal.
Give to us the sensibility of the good earth, as well as the courage to reach for the stars.
Bread, like life, must be broken to be whole, to fulfill our purpose, to embrace and nourish the bittersweet of life. Let us break bread.
The breaking of the bread and tasting of the sap, let us give thanks for the return of the light, the lengthening of days, and the lifting of our spirits, and the renewal of life, which is eternal. I will now offer our blessing. We have before us in our sanctuaries and at home the two simple elements that represent the rebirth of life with the great turning of the seasons. These simple gifts, the maple sap that flows without our bidding, and the bread, the most basic of variety of foods that nourishes our bodies. May they bring us blessings today, including the blessings of humility and hope, as we acknowledge our place amid the great interconnected cycles of life. May we receive the blessing of joy as we taste the sweet nectar of maple that has been flowing this time of year for untold millennia. May we receive the blessing of human community as we remember how this gift was freely shared between ancient indigenous peoples and the land of this land and the first settlers. May we embrace the blessing of peace and goodwill for the year ahead until we can once again share this symbolic communion meal together in body and in spirit. May this be so. I now invite those in the sanctuary or sanctuaries to come forward and receive their maple syrup and timbit, and for those at home to savor whatever treat you have prepared for yourself.
When we come to the edge of our life, and we step into the darkness, the unknown, we will find something solid we can stand upon, for we believe that we will surely learn to fly. Learn to fly, learn to fly. We believe we will surely learn to fly. We will find something solid we can stand on, for we believe that we will surely learn to fly. When we come to the edge of the light we have, and we step into the darkness, the unknown, we will find something solid we can stand upon, for we believe that we will surely learn to fly. Learn to fly, learn to fly. We believe we will surely learn to fly. We will find something solid we can stand upon, for we believe that we will surely learn to fly.
Thank you all for participating in that little ritual for the second year in Halifax, and I know it's gone on for many years before that in Bangor. Now, I want to share with you just a short reflection, and Drew has a similar or a reflection to follow as well. This morning, our two congregations unite as one, and in doing so, we transcend the artificial borders drawn on maps. We come together to celebrate one people on one planet. We carry the flame of Unitarian Universalism from the time it was planted in our communities back in the early 1800s, and we hold it high today, and we're ready to pass it on to future generations. In an increasingly secular world, it sometimes seems that religion and religious communities are becoming irrelevant. We can't let this happen. Our message is too important. When we face so many problems in our shared planet that have spiritual roots, the increasing economic disparity within our countries and around the world, the challenges of democracy in the face of something called alternative facts, drug abuse, homelessness, loneliness, mental health issues, all have spiritual roots. The list of spiritual issues that we face is daunting, and we need our faith traditions and our communities to address them. Religious communities have always turned to the cycles of nature as a way to stay connected with the systems that sustain our life. It's no coincidence that Christmas falls at the time of year of the longest nights, that Easter and Passover occur in the spring, that Hindu Diwali is celebrated at harvest time. In our part of the world, there is no better reason to celebrate than the coming of spring, a time when our faith in the sustaining power of nature is once again renewed. And there's no better metaphor for the sweetness of life than the maple sap. Your presence here is a testament to the ongoing relevance of our faith tradition, the need for community, the celebration of our life together on this one impossibly beautiful planet. Today we celebrate all this and our spiritual heritage, even as we build new traditions and new rituals to sustain us, rituals like a common meal, a communion with maple syrup and a timbit.
Just as nature unfolds its wisdom in its cycle of seasons, we too, as human beings, experience seasons within our hearts and souls. In the ancient writings of the Hebrew scriptures of Ecclesiastes, we are reminded of this ancient wisdom. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck that which is planted. A time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up, and a time to weep, and also a time to laugh. Spring reminds us that we will all die and be reborn into new stages or cycles of existence. Many of the religious value systems by which we live remind us of this truth. Spring makes this truth so abundantly clear that it hits you like a wall of moist, humid air and instills in us moments of beauty and awe. It's like the spring is jumping up and down and getting right in your face and saying, renewal is possible. Life is full of opportunities. See it, smell it, feel it, taste it. Experience the freshness that I bring. The call is so powerful that it's almost impossible to ignore it, even if we are in a place of being stressed or down or depressed. Its essence energizes our spiritual being and calls us back to hope of new possibilities, even as we remember old ones. In all its splendor, the spring reminds us deeply and fundamentally that life is precious. It needs to be honored, it needs to be savored, and witnessed every chance we get. And that we are, as inconveniently as it may seem at times, connected to all human lives and all life as we know it. This reminds me of a beautiful poem, one of my favorites by Jalaluddin Rumi, who says the following about our interconnectedness to all things. Rumi says, "We begin as mineral. We emerged into plant life and into animal state, and then into being human. And always we have forgotten our former states, except in the early spring, when we slightly recall being green again. That is how a young person turns towards a teacher. That is how a baby leans towards the breast without knowing the secret of its desire, yet turning instinctively. Humankind," he says, "is being led along an evolving course, and through this migration of intelligences, and though we seem to be sleeping, there is an inner wakefulness that directs the dream and that will eventually startle us back into the reality of who we are." So, dear ones, it is rather fitting that we should gather here today and reach out across the borders in our celebration of connection to this ancient wisdom of the earth and all living things. May this time together inspire our spirits and lighten our souls as we open ourselves to being witness to the renewing of life and the renewal of potential in our hearts, minds, and bodies. May we pray for this wisdom to be brought to bear to the world's travails and trials. And may we continue to hold spring, not just as a season in nature, but also a season in our own spiritual growth and development. Blessed be. We now have a wonderful treat that is uniquely UU Halifax oriented. Our closing song will be led by a group called the After Choir. Norm asked me to introduce the closing song as a means of biding a little time for them to get their crew set up. I am told that the After Choir is a tradition that goes back several decades in Halifax. It's a group of amateur musicians who could only find the time to get together and rehearse after the choir practice. So, since the name After Choir, it was coined by their longtime minister, Reverend Dr. John Barrows Johnson. Today's performance of the After Choir marks a significant milestone in its long history because Reverend Norm will be retiring in June. I'm not supposed to, usually talk about people's ages unless you kind of check in with them, but he's going to be 73. But he will be retiring, and the After Choir will continue on after the After Choir. We wish the After Choir well in their new reincarnation, and we also wish Reverend Norm best in his retirement. And if he ever, in his stepping back from his role in the pulpit, misses being able to be in the pulpit and preach, we always have space for you here in Bangor. We'd love to have you join us. So, are you all set, After Choir folks?
It's maple syrup time. It's maple syrup time. First you get the buckets ready. 7% of water evaporates, just like the song. When what is left is syrupy, don't leave it too long. Watch out for burning, maple syrup time. It's maple syrup time. It's not the quickest system, but each year I can't resist it. Get out the buckets, tap the trees in time. Making it is half the fun and satisfaction when it's done. Keep up the fire, maple syrup time. My grandma says perhaps it's just a waste of time, but no more than this attempt to make a happy little rhyme. So pat your feet on sweeter tail, but keep in good time. Keep up the fire, maple syrup time. It's maple syrup time. Send this song around the world with love to every boy and girl. Hoping they don't mind a little advice and rhyme. As in life or evolution, rarely is there a quick solution. Anything worthwhile takes a little time. We boil and boil and boil and boil it all life long. When what is left is syrupy, don't leave it on the flame too long. Seize a minute, build a new world, sing an old song. Keep up the fire, maple syrup time. Maple syrup time. Maple syrup time.
I've invited Carrie, president of our congregation, to join me as we extinguish our chalice. So as we extinguish our Unitarian Universalist chalice flame, symbol of faith, hope, love, and connection, and the nurturance and openness like springtime that our faith brings to our hearts, let us be reminded that although our time of worship has come to an end, our time for service to each other and to the world has just begun. And now I invite Norm to extinguish the chalice in Halifax. I now invite everyone to rise in body or in spirit as we sing our benediction. The benediction that we sing is a tradition in our congregation. We sing this every Sunday at the end of service. The words and the rhythm are slightly tricky, so for those of you who are joining us and are not familiar with the words, it's okay to hum along. And as we progress in singing it, you'll notice that people start raising their hands up and up and up and up, and you're welcome to join in the motions.
Let us go forth into the week ahead, striving to be faithful to our life's journeys, serving the needs of the earth and its inhabitants, sharing in the spirit
So once again, I want to thank all who attended the service today in Bangor and Halifax and online by Zoom or YouTube. I want to say goodbye to all of us who joined on YouTube. We'll be logging you off now. For those of you who have joined us by Zoom, in a few moments we will be providing you with an opportunity to have an online virtual coffee hour that is for both folks from Halifax and from Bangor. But before we dissipate, for those of you who feel comfortable, I'm going to invite the people present in Halifax and also the people in Bangor to come forward into this area here and face the camera so that we can wave goodbye to our Canadian friends. So let's do that before we start the Zoom coffee hour. And I think this is our record turnout since we have been back from in person. So let's everybody wave. And then if we can switch to highlight Halifax so they can wave at us.
Today.
We have to move down there.
Thank you, Reverend Norm and everybody. And we look forward to doing this again next year.